Good evening and welcome to our telecast of Just the News. I'm Faye D'Souza. Let's get straight to it. The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, that puts out regular data on unemployment and jobs in our country, has put out an estimate saying that 1 crore Indian citizens have lost their jobs in the second wave of COVID. 1 crore Indian citizens is 10 million people who've lost their jobs. Now, this survey also said that 97% of the households they interviewed across the country said that their income has actually come down since the beginning of the pandemic last year. CMIE has just finished a nationwide survey where they've interviewed 175,000 households in April this year. Mahesh Vyas, the chief executive of CMIE, has been quoted saying that people who lose their jobs find it hard to get employment again. Specifically, while informal sector jobs come back quickly, formal sector jobs take up to a year to come back. Especially quality job opportunities could take longer. According to CMIE, unemployment rate is expected to be at 12% at the end of May as opposed to 8% in April. The worst it was last year during the lockdown in May, when it was 23.5%, which means 1 out of every 4 people almost was unemployed last year. The normal for India is about 3 to 4%. We are likely to be at 12% at the end of May. The Class 12 CBSE board examinations have been cancelled due to the rise of COVID cases and feedback received from various stakeholders. It was also decided that CBSE will take steps to compile results for all of the Class 12 students with a well-defined objective criteria in a time-bound manner. That's all we know so far. The Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, conducted a meeting with union ministers, cabinet secretaries and other stakeholders to discuss the situation of the Class 12 board examinations and review all possible options for that exam. The Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Prakash Javadekar, and Finance, Nirmala Sitharaman, were also part of that meeting, among others. On to our COVID numbers. India reported 128,000 COVID cases, 2,795 deaths on Monday. The Joint Secretary for the Ministry of Health, Love Agarwal, has said active cases are down by 50% and there is a 1.3 lakh decrease in the number of active cases in a day. He said 30 states and union territories have cases that are consistently declining for the last 1 week, and this is a positive trend. He also said that since the 28th of May, the country has reported less than 2 lakh cases every day. There is a decline of infection in the country, he said. These are, of course, the official government numbers. The Health Ministry has also said that the mixing of COVID vaccines in different doses is not protocol right now until further updates. Dr. V.K. Paul, a member of the Niti Aayog, has said the same vaccines, Covishield and Covaxin, will be administered in both doses. There's international research underway right now on the mixing of vaccines, as there is a possibility of a positive effect. But there are also plausible, harmful reactions cannot be ruled out either. It is unresolved as a scientific question and science will settle it, he said. The Supreme Court has decided to stay the Delhi High Court judgment that declared integrated GST on oxygen concentrators that are being imported as personal gifts unconstitutional. Now, you'll remember we brought you this story on the 21st of May when the High Court had a petition placed before it. This was an individual who was in need of oxygen. His nephew, who lives in the US, had sourced an oxygen concentrator and sent it to him as a gift. But there was GST or integrated GST of 12% that was due on that concentrator applied by the central government. The High Court had crushed that order of the central government and basically said that this is a George Floyd moment for the citizens of this country. The refrain is "I can't breathe," albeit in a somewhat different context and setting, end quote. The Supreme Court today has decided to issue notice against the appeal against that High Court verdict. And until the next hearing of this case, which will happen in 4 weeks, the High Court verdict will be stayed, which means there is a stay and the central government can now continue to apply 12% integrated GST on oxygen concentrators that are being imported as gifts for personal use. Before we go any further, I must issue a very, very strong trigger warning about the next story that is coming up. I strongly advise our viewers who are experiencing anxiety not to watch the video any further. In a shocking incident in Uttarakhand, stray dogs were spotted feeding on human corpses at the Kedar Ghat. Some of the corpses were half burnt and locals suspect they were COVID patients. According to a report by ANI, other local residents also said parts of bodies had drifted onto the banks of the river when the water levels of the Bhagirathi had risen due to rainfall over the last few days. The municipality president, Ramesh Semwal, has said that after receiving complaints from locals, they had assigned a person at Kedar Ghat to cremate the half-burnt bodies that are being washed up on the riverbank. Similar incidents were reported in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, where dead bodies were being washed in by the rivers. Now, this also comes 2 days after a video went viral in which 2 people were seen flinging a body of a deceased COVID patient into the river from a bridge in Uttar Pradesh. The incident was shot on the phone by a couple who were driving past that spot in Balrampur district on the 28th of May. On camera, 2 men, one of them in a PPE suit, were seen lifting a body onto the bridge over the Rapti river. The chief medical officer of Balrampur later confirmed that the body was indeed of a COVID patient and the relatives were trying to dump it in the river. 2 of the relatives have since been arrested. Uttar Pradesh has launched a Mission June campaign and plans to vaccinate over 1 crore people in the state in the next 30 days. To meet the targets, the government will be setting up approximately 6,000 vaccination centers across Uttar Pradesh. The Chief Minister, Mr. Adityanath, has said, our goal is to give vaccine shots to over 1 crore people. We have sufficient vaccines available to us to meet the target, end quote. Couple of states announcing changes in restrictions. Andhra Pradesh has extended its lockdown until the 10th of June. There are warnings of a possible third wave which could impact children. So the state government has constituted a pediatric task force of experts to advise the government. Andhra Pradesh reported 7,943 COVID cases and 98 deaths on Monday. Rajasthan has noted a decline in cases, so the state has issued guidelines to unlock the state from the 2nd of June. Exemption for various activities will be given only in areas where the positivity rate is less than 10% or the use of oxygen, ICU and ventilators is less than 60%. All government offices of the state will open from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. With 25% of the employees present on the 7th of June. After that, 50%, and they'll increase it thereof. Private offices will remain open till 2 p.m. with 25% capacity. Rajasthan reported 1,498 cases and 68 deaths on Monday. In other news, away from COVID. Now, the tussle between the central government and the West Bengal government continues. Former Chief Secretary of West Bengal, Alpan Bandyopadhyay, who has now been named the Chief Advisor to the West Bengal government, has been served a show cause notice by the central government, the Union Home Ministry, under Section 51 of the Disaster Management Act. Now, Mr. Bandyopadhyay has been asked to explain in writing to the Home Ministry in the next 3 days why action shouldn't be taken against him under the Disaster Management Act. Now, according to the Act, if someone fails to comply with instructions, he or she could face imprisonment of up to 2 years or a fine or both. The notice said that the officer in this case, by abstaining himself from the review meeting conducted by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in cyclone-affected areas of West Bengal on the 28th of May, has acted in a manner tantamount to refusing to comply with lawful directions of the central government and thus is violative of Section 51 of the Disaster Management Act, end quote. Kerala journalist Siddiqui Kappan, who is under detention in Uttar Pradesh, still accused of unlawful activities and sedition, has approached the Mathura court for bail. Kappan has said that the cases registered against him in the FIR are fabricated, concocted and manipulated. In his bail application, he has also said that he was illegally arrested while he was heading to Hathras in Uttar Pradesh to report on the Hathras case in October last year. He's been in detention for 7 months now. The application said that such a detention, despite having a journalistic card, an ID and credentials, amounts to a violation of fundamental rights and of course violates the freedom of speech and expression of the media. There was nothing reasonably suspicious to warrant his arrest, he said. News now coming in from the world of business. India has clocked negative GDP growth of 7.3% for the financial year 2020-2021. This is our worst performance in 40 years as GDP growth of our country. So I'll tell you what this number means. Minus 7.3% means our economy has shrunk instead of growing. And this is the first time it's happening in a very, very long time. The good news is the fourth quarter of the fiscal actually showed a small growth of 1.6%. That was not enough though to bring the whole year into positive territory. So what this means is that as a full country, in our whole economy, if you add up agriculture and manufacturing and services, all of the things that we manufactured and managed as services, we've actually done 7.3% less this year than we had done the previous year, which was 2019-20, when we had done a positive growth of 4%. That's what that number means. And of course, India being a developing nation, we've always grown and we've hardly ever shrunk. And a shrinking of 7.3% is the worst we've seen in 40 years. In 1920, the GDP had shown very poor growth, but it still grew by 4%. It was 11-year low, but it was not in negative territory. Mostly manufacturing and construction sectors had seen some sort of shrinking, but the rest of it, agriculture, still performed quite well. But if we look at the fiscal year or the financial year 2020-2021, is largely lockdowns, and it was largely COVID. Starting from April last year. So this is the total number that we're seeing, and of course this is the first provisional number, and there will be a revised estimate that will come out in some time, but it's still not good news. News coming in now from across the world. According to China's National Health Commission, a 41-year-old man in China has been confirmed as the first case of a human being contracting a strain of bird flu called H10N3. Reuters has reported that the commission has said that H10N3 is a low pathogenic or relatively less severe strain of the virus in poultry, and the risk of it spreading in a very large scale is low. That's what we know so far. The WHO, on the other hand, has said that the strain of COVID, which is called B1617 as a variant that was first found in India, will from now on be referred to as the Delta variant. Earlier, the WHO had directed that the variants should not be referred to by the origin of their country. No country should be stigmatized for the detecting and the reporting of COVID variants. Now, you'll remember, largely there were references to a UK variant, a South African variant, a Brazilian variant, and then the B1617, which was detected in India, was being called the Indian variant, which the Indian government took severe objection to, and the WHO has now given it a different name. It will be called the Delta variant. And this is really important among many, many other things, because if countries are actually shamed for reporting variants, it will discourage them from reporting it. And it's really important for the health of the whole world that variants are reported as soon as they are detected. News now coming in from the world of sports. Japan's tennis player Naomi Osaka, who's world number 2, has said she's withdrawing from the French Open following her decision to boycott all media activity at the Grand Slam event. Osaka tweeted that the best thing for the tournament, the other players, and my own well-being is that I withdraw so that everyone can get back to focusing on the tennis that's going on in Paris, end quote. Osaka was fined $15,000 and threatened with disqualification after she refused to carry on the mandatory news conference following her first round win. This comes after Osaka said that she didn't want to do any interviews during the tournament to prioritize her mental health. She felt that the press conferences were detrimental to her mental health. She also said that she's been suffering long bouts of depression since the US Open win back in 2018. This has now shone a light on the mental health and the support that athletes need across the world, and the pressure that the severe media coverage puts on them. One piece of positive news before we leave you for the day. A documentary titled The 2020 Creators of Change by YouTube Originals, which features India's own Prajakta Kohli, has been nominated under the category of Outstanding Daytime Non-Fiction Special at the Daytime Emmy Awards this year. The documentary also features Michelle Obama, Lisa Koshy, and Thembe Malhaba, along with Prajakta Kohli, and it focuses on empowerment of young girls and education across the world. We wish Prajakta Kohli very good luck at the Daytime Emmys this year. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, the source articles from which we have read out these stories to you are in the YouTube description of our video. So if you want to read more about any of these stories, that's where you can find the source articles. Also, do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave us a word of feedback. It's always our pleasure to hear from you. Thank you for watching.